As I traveled to a hilltop in Bethlehem, still used by shepherds today, I want to understand another aspect of Jesus, that of a king. There were many kings in power around the world, but how would Jesus be different from them? Far east of Bethlehem, the wise men read a prophecy found in Jeremiah 23, which tells of a coming king. The passage in Jeremiah 23 reads that this ruler would reign wisely, with justice and righteousness, as a good shepherd. Was that truly the heart of Jesus? Maybe the answer could be found in those invited to his birthday party.
The birth of Jesus included a triumphal announcement in the form of angels to simple shepherds watching over their flocks by night. This was not just one or two angels, but a choir, a battalion, a heavenly army filling up the nighttime sky. This was an announcement fit for a king.
And it came to shepherds. Shepherds never received this kind of attention, especially from a king. Interestingly, from the shepherd's field, they not only had a view of the manger, traditionally marked by the Church of the Nativity, but they could easily see one of the palaces of another king, Herod's opulent Herodium. Now this was a bold move, for Jesus, the righteous king, to be born in the backyard of such a ruthless king.
Herod was crazy. He was really sick and had paranoia, being sure that everybody is around him and wanted to kill him. So much so that he was awful with his people, he was awful with his own family. He killed his most beloved wife, he killed his own children. He was also very powerful, so people were, for good reason, very afraid of him as a king. The others around him didn't like him at all, including his masters in the Roman Empire. At the end of his career, Augustus said once that it's better to be a pig in his court rather than being one of his sons.
To expand his kingdom, Herod built large homes in high places. The most famous is Masada, but this one is called the Herodium.
The Herodium was built in 20 BC and acted not only as a fortress, but a home and retreat for King Herod. Many of the sites I've seen in Israel were places of worship. I wondered if that was the intention of this place too.
Herodium was a fortress in the middle of nothing. He built an artificial mountain that was topped by a wonderful fortress. Below that was a huge area of palaces and towns and an administration center, gardens, a huge pool full of water in the middle of the desert.
Now, he got the name the Great. How did that come about?
He was great in terms of taking a small place and making it a very important entity in the world of the time. He was the greatest of the builders at that time.
Well, these are two very different types of kings, Herod and Jesus. You know, as I walked around Israel, I didn't really see any monuments that Jesus had erected in his honor. On the other hand, all that Herod left was rocks and stones, now all turned to ruins. Jesus focused on salvation and life, and Jesus proclaimed the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of man. He welcomed all people, even shepherds. You know, Herod could never promise the things that Jesus promised. He could just promise more taxes and more buildings.
Herod was paranoid. He was what we call hard power. It was a kingship by coercion, by force, by money. He wanted all of the adulation the world had to offer. Jesus, on the other hand, had a kingship of servanthood. It wasn't at all coercive. It's what we call soft power. It was a kingship of influence, of example. It was a kingship to lift others up, not to elevate oneself.
Well, Herod was wicked and Jesus was sinless. Herod was ruling by human power. Jesus was ruling by divine power. Herod was ruling the way the others of this world do, and that is through the use of the sword. Jesus was ruling by changing people's hearts.
The birth of Jesus caused Herod to order all babies 2 years old and younger to be killed. Joseph, warned in a dream, packed up the family and left town. The sound of babies crying and women screaming behind them.
The fact that he murders all the male children from newborn to 2 years old, does that seem out of character for him?
It could have been very characteristic to him once he got afraid and he heard somebody saying there is a danger for you. Somebody that will kill you or take over from you is there. He would have very little hesitation to kill everybody around.
Herod was always paranoid that someone would have more power, and Jesus was always concerned that people get more power.
While many celebrate the birth of Jesus on the ground floor of the Church of the Nativity, I travel to the basement to see evidence of Herod's most despicable act as king.
I'm standing here underneath the Church of the Nativity in a room right here where they have preserved the bones of the children that they believe were killed 2,000 years ago. It's a horrifying picture just to see those bones and to think of what had happened here in Bethlehem around the time of Jesus' birth.
Nowadays, we live in a similar situation. Many people, and mainly children, are killed in this area. Sometimes, many innocent people are killed in the crossfire. So this reminds us of Herod, who killed the children 2,000 years ago.
You know, I don't see Herod caring about the shepherds and the elderly and the families of men, women, and children. They only stood in his way toward greatness. Jesus, on the other hand, did care, and he built his kingdom without walls or boundaries on a foundation of love and became the greatest king in all of history.